Welcome, guys. This is Glasgow Rangers Nation. I'm Owen James, and this is all your latest Rangers news, guys. On ahead of another boring international break. Gotta say, I hate international breaks. Absolutely dull as. More pointless games, more rubbish. Yes, I know it's a World Cup year next year, but look, I don't care. I genuinely don't care. If it's not club football, could not give a monkeys. Right, look, we're going to talk a few things this morning. We're going to talk Mark van Bommel. We're going to talk Hamza. We're going to talk all things Rangers this morning. Guys, please, obviously, if you enjoy the content, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Right, we're going to start off by talking and kind of in a way, partially answering a question we all had when the conversation was had about how was it Russell Martin? How was Russell Martin appointed? Look, I think we're stuck with him now until the end of the season. I don't think the 49ers are going to sack him. I think we're going to stuck with him through to the end of the season. And I think, look, it's certainly going to be an interesting season. You look across the city and things are not happy over there. Brendan is clearly not a happy man. The fans are not happy. I mean, there was even talk at one point of Brendan walking out on Celtic. That was certainly talked of by a number of sources, but that doesn't seem to have obviously occurred as of yet. But look, it genuinely is a situation, I think, where they are in absolute meltdown. Genuinely in a bit of meltdown at this moment in time. But look, I mean, as it was said the other day, that squad that we've assembled under any decent manager probably wins the league this season, given the fact that they are in crisis over the city. They may win the league just by the fact that we're so shockingly bad this season under this manager, unless, of course, he turns it round. Who knows what happens over the coming months, guys? Let's not really talk and try and turn this into a Russell Martin bashing session anyway. But one of the questions we did ask at the time that Russell Martin was appointed was who else was interviewed, and we all kind of went through the Gerrard and the Muscats and the Roses and all those other names that came up, Danny Rule, lots of different names. Now it reveals that one name that has revealed himself over the last day or so is that of former PSV, Bayern Munich, AC Milan, Barcelona player Mark van Bommel. I mean, certainly a footballing CV that anyone would be proud of. I mean, starting his career at PSV, on to Barca, where he played with the likes of Eto'o and Ronaldinho. I've actually seen Van Bommel play in person in the Camp Nou. I actually went to the Camp Nou, saw Barcelona beat Villarreal, and he was absolutely outstanding. Absolutely brilliant footballer. Bayern Munich, AC Milan, PSV again, top career, and also had a managerial career as well. Started at PSV, was sacked when PSV were fourth after a defeat against Feyenoord. He then went to Wolfsburg, had a very mixed time at Wolfsburg, but then became Royal Antwerp manager, where he left at the end of his contract after financial problems at the club and falling out between himself and the board. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Van Bommel certainly has statistically better record statistically than Russell Martin. I mean, his win percentage at PSV Eindhoven was 58.67%. His win percentage at Wolfsburg, yes, was bad at 30.77. Was only manager of Wolfsburg for 13 games. Won his first four as Wolfsburg manager. Topped the Bundesliga at one point. Then had 8 winless games and was sacked, which, and 3 of those were draws, which a little bit harsh, you've got to say. There's got to be something else behind that one, I think. And then at Royal Antwerp, his win percentage was 51.4%, giving him a career win percentage of 52.8%. Certainly also a better, Russell Martin's career goal difference for his teams is +5. Van Bommel's is +149. Clearly better defensively as well than Russell Martin. So statistically wise, he was certainly, he certainly is a lot better than Russell Martin. Like I said, he started obviously as manager of PSV Eindhoven, obviously his club in Holland. His first game it was when he took over from Philippe Cocu, who went to Fenerbahce. He made his senior managerial debut against Feyenoord in the Johan Cruyff Shield. He lost that on penalties. A little week late, he started off his PSV career by a 4-0 win at home to Utrecht. 14 victories at the start of the season. Then he lost 2-1 to Feyenoord. And that was a downturn in form, and he was then sacked with the team fourth. Wolfsburg, like I said, a very mixed career. I think there's more to report than has been let on, in what sources I've been able to kind of pull together. He then went to Royal Antwerp, where he was appointed by former sporting director there and former teammate Mark Overmars, another ex-Barcelona player. He won the Belgian Cup in his first season, defeating local rivals Mechelen 2-0. He also won the Belgian Pro League as well. And then in his second season, he lost the cup final to USG, and then kind of season fell away a little bit, and the club sold their best players. Certainly a very mixed time. Worked with the likes of Toby Alderweireld, for example. Something definitely went on there as well. A troubled time, shall we say? But look, Van Bommel obviously has spoken about the fact that he did have talks with Rangers. The Rangers did speak to him about the managerial job before they appointed Russell Martin as manager. Russell Martin's been pretty much a disaster since he's come in, and obviously, yes, it's still very early days there. This was talking on Talk Sport to Jim White, in which he said, there were some talks to become Rangers manager, but not directly to the board of Rangers. So it seems like it was some sort of, through that review and everything else, asked if he would like the job. He said it's the kind, and whether that would be a job that would have interested him in the long run. He was asked obviously directly about that as well. And, he spoke very positively about that. Let's face it, Dutch managers have got a pretty decent record, haven't they? At Ibrox, obviously, Dick Advocat, for example. But, look, I would have said, personally speaking, Van Bommel couldn't have been any worse than Russell Martin. I think it would have been a very interesting appointment. And certainly the other thing with Van Bommel is you're getting a guy it's a name, isn't it? It's someone who has a world-renowned name. This is a guy who played for some of the best clubs in the world, Bayern Munich, AC Milan, PSV Eindhoven. He's certainly got to have some contacts at some of those clubs, which could have helped us in the long run. I mean, I think this would have been a much better appointment to me than Russell Martin, certainly. But, interesting to hear that he was involved in those talks. Right, let's move it along a little bit. Look, it may be that he comes back into the reckoning if Martin gets sacked. Right, we're going to talk about Hamza Igerman now. Obviously, now Hamza Igerman hit the ground running for his new team, Lille, in his debut at a 7-1 win over Lorient. He scored twice, coming off the bench to score twice in what everyone's called a regen number 9 performance from Hamza. Now, look, we don't want to get particularly into the whys and wherefores of the St Mirren substitution argument, and who's in the right, who's in the wrong. We'll never know the whole truth on that one. Russell Martin says one thing, Hamza may say another. Hamza didn't really particularly talk about that. He didn't mention that. He just talked about his move. Now, this is what Hamza had to say. Interesting words from the former Rangers striker. He said, first of all, thank God I managed to make a good transfer. I'm very happy that my transfer has come to fruition under the best possible conditions. I joined a French club that helps young talents to develop so they can be in the best environment. I joined Ligue 1, a championship renowned for helping young players progress and give the best of themselves. I thank the Moroccan supporters and my teammates in the national team. They have supported me a lot in this important stage of my career. Interesting that there's no thanks for Rangers, no thanks for Russell Martin, no thanks for Rangers board, etc., etc. I think there was definitely a breakdown in relationship between Russell Martin and the young Moroccan. I mean, look, whatever you think about Hamza and how he acted, and yes, he probably didn't do the right thing, but as we've seen over, some of the transfers down south, the likes of Johan Wissa, Andrew Alexander Isak, when players do what Hamza does, in terms of refuse to do certain things. Isak obviously refused to train, refused to play. Wissa did the same for Brentford. Garnacho did the same for Manchester United, and all three of them got their move. Then you see, like I say, Mark Gahey, who behaved like a gentleman. He didn't get his move. He carried on playing, perhaps did the professional thing, and didn't get what he wanted. And apparently he's really pissed off about it. Now, it seems obviously that Hamza went down the Isak Wissa route and decided to kind of throw his toys out the pram. Now, unfortunately, it seems that is the only way footballers can get their way these days, with the contract rules as they stand. And whether you're for that or whether you're against that, the only thing I kind of say is that if you were unhappy in your job, you wouldn't stand for it. You'd perhaps call in sick or get yourself signed off or just resign, So footballers don't have the right to kind of do that. So this is their only way out. it does seem interesting as well that he talks about the fact that the reason he's gone to Ligue 1 is because of the development opportunities he feels he'll get at Lille and in Ligue 1. It certainly feels, I think he feels that, that's probably why he went there rather than the Premier League, because he wants to develop still, he wants to improve still. And that's good, that's positive. I mean, I think, for him, he is going to get better. He is going to become a better player. I think eventually he will play in the EPL. It's very interesting, very telling that he's saying that he's very happy now, that he's happy the transfers actually happened. I think there was even though Russell Martin said earlier in the window there'd been only a bid for Dessers, I think there had been contact with some of our players by clubs through third parties to those clubs and their agents. Now, you can say that's tapping up, you can say that's wrong, but look, let's not be ridiculous about this. We do it, every club does it. All clubs talk to players ahead of talking to the club to find out whether they're interested, whether they'd come, whether there's any point even talking to the club. It happens. So, we can kick off about it, we can rage and moan about it, but it's the world of football these days. And, certainly some footballers' autobiographies that I've read, it goes on. And whether you like it or not, it happens. And I think obviously there had been a move by Lille to talk to Hamza and his people. And clearly Hamza wanted the move. And look, at the end of the day, we get 10.4 million. They get the player. Hopefully it all works out for the long run for both clubs, that we can reinvest that money in January, or we've already perhaps reinvested it in Chimiti. What a waste of money, possibly. Look, it is what it is, guys, but it's interesting to see what Hamza had to say on the matter. But look, like I said, we can all moan, whine and whinge about it, but it's literally no point. Thank Hamza for what he did for the club whilst he was here. I don't think he got a fair crack at the whip. I don't think he was played anywhere near enough. I think he should have been played more in that number 9 role. He was pushed out wide for Dessers. Big mistake, in my opinion. You can go on about Dessers' 52 goals in 115 games, but how many of those goals actually mattered? How many of those goals were at critical times? Very few of them. Whereas Hamza's goals certainly seem to be more critical. The Celtic one, for example, standing out amongst others. Right, let's move it along a little bit more. Nico Raskin. Right, Raskin apparently suffered another blow last night when he was left out of the Belgian team. He was on the bench for the Belgian national football team. They won 6-0 in the end against Liechtenstein. Goals from De Kuyper, Tielemans, Theater, De Bruyne and Malik Fofana. Raskin didn't even get on during that game. Rudy Garcia not picking him, probably because of the fact that he has not had a lot of match time for Rangers. That is usually the reason why you don't get picked for your national team. And I feel that, perhaps, Raskin will be a bit sick, that he's obviously missing out on this. He's not playing, whatever. Now, in terms of whatever you think, again, of the Raskin situation, whether you think he's a hothead who deserves to be dropped and treated as he does, or whether you think Russell Martin's in the wrong for alienating one of our better players, I think it shows that Russell Martin is an exceptionally poor man manager. If you compare Neil McCann's response to the way that Russell Martin's dealt with this, it shows that Neil McCann's clearly a much better man manager, and perhaps even Barry Ferguson was as well, of Nico Raskin, because they certainly got the best out of him, unlike Russell Martin. Now, in terms of the whole Nico Raskin situation, Kevin Thelwell has clarified that by saying that there will be clear-the-air talks once Raskin returns from international duty. Now, Raskin was included in the Europa League squad, interestingly enough. So it's clear that there is clearly plans to try and reintegrate him, or else he wouldn't have been put in that squad. Look, I certainly hope that he can be reintegrated. I certainly hope that he can play again for Rangers. He is under contract. He is our player for at least another 2 years. Now, whether he leaves in January, which is a possibility, or whether he leaves at the end of the next season, I don't know. But we've got to try and get the best out of him. You cannot have a player that is sitting there earning big money and not playing. Certainly someone as talented as Nico Raskin. And the other thing you've got to think about, guys, is this. If he is alienated, if he is pushed out, if he is put into the reserves and not played, his market value will vastly diminish, as teams will know that he's not wanted at the club and will obviously come in and low ball Rangers in terms of a price for Raskin. And that's certainly something we don't want. Well, guys, let me know what you think of the stories we've covered in today's video. Thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, if you've enjoyed, please like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.